Summary of Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman starts by explaining his idea of the brain's two main thinking processes, which he names System 1 and System 2. The first system functions in an automatic, intuitive, and involuntary manner. It helps us figure out easy math problems, read simple words, and tell what kinds of things are in a picture. System 2 is in charge of actions and thoughts that need careful consideration and attention, like problem solving, thinking, and focusing. We are lazy and use System 1 instead of System 2 because it takes more work. But this leads to mistakes, especially since System 1 is biased and can be easily swayed by different things in its surroundings. This is called stimulation. Kahneman goes into more detail about System 1's biases. Sentences that are simpler and more familiar seem to be truer than sentences that take more thought. This is called cognitive ease. System 1 also looks for examples that back up what we already think, the confirmation bias. And because of this, we like or hate everything about a person, place, or thing, the halo effect. It also makes us ask easier questions instead of harder ones, like what is my mood right now, instead of how happy am I these days. The second part of the book is all about how estimates can be biased. Stats are hard for us to understand, and we often don't get that small samples are naturally more extreme than big samples. This makes us make choices based on too little information. Additionally, our minds tend to make up stories based on scientific data, even if there isn't a real reason for some of that data. If you ask us to guess a number and then give us a number to ground ourselves with, like was Gandhi over 35 when he died, and then how old was Gandhi when he died, that number will have a big effect on our guess. If you ask us to guess how often something or someone happens, like people getting divorced after 60 years old, we probably won't try to figure out the basic statistical rate. Instead, we'll overestimate if we can think of clear examples of that thing or event or have personal experience with it. We also miss statistics in other ways. For example, if Kahneman describes a fictional character who fits the stereotype of a computer science student, he calls him Tom W., we will overestimate the chance that he is actually in that group, even though there aren't that many students in that field compared to other fields. In the same way, if a fictional character fits the stereotype of a feminist, Kahneman calls her Linda, people are more likely to say that she is a feminist bank teller than just a bank teller. This goes against the logic of probability, though, because every feminist bank teller is also a bank teller. When we try to make predictions, we often overestimate the importance of things like skill, stupidity, and intention and underestimate the importance of luck and chance. For example, a golfer who has a good first day in a tournament is statistically likely to have a worse second day, and there is no other reason why this would happen. We keep trying to make sense of the world, but in the process, we give wrong answers for the past and think we know more about the future than we really do. The tendency to think we were better at predicting the future after the fact is called the hindsight error. Kahneman then talks about overconfidence, which is when we are sure that our gut feelings, predictions, and points of view are correct even when there is evidence to show that they are not. Kahneman talks about a time when he and a friend watched soldiers do group drills and tried to figure out who would make a good officer. Even though their predictions turned out to be totally wrong, they didn't change how they made their predictions or how they behaved. People also tend to trust their gut feelings more than statistics and numerical records. However, it is more important to rely on plans, statistics, and numerical records than on subjective feelings. This can be seen in how the APGAR tests in birth rooms came to be like this. This made it easier to find kids who might be in trouble by standardizing how they were checked out, which greatly decreased the death rate among babies. Kahneman spends a lot of time criticizing people who are seen as experts, like financial analysts and newscasters, even though statistics show that they aren't good at predicting the future. He works with Gary Klein to figure out when to trust his expert instincts. They find that some places are good for getting better at something. People need to be in settings that are regular enough to be predictable and have the chance to learn these regularities through experience in order to become experts. Firefighters and chess players are two examples of people who are truly pros. Kahneman goes into more detail about other ways we are too sure of ourselves. For example, we often take on dangerous projects because we think the best will happen. We don't know about other people's mistakes, so we think we will do better than others when we try new things, like starting a small business or, as Kahneman himself learned, making lesson plans. The next thing Kahneman writes is about the idea he and Amos Tversky came up with, which is called prospect theory. First, he talks about Daniel Bernoulli's utility theory, which says that money's value is not fixed. $10 means the same thing to someone with $100 as it does to someone with $1,000. But Kahneman points out a problem with Bernoulli's theory. It doesn't take into account where a person is coming from. Someone yesterday might have had $1 million and someone today might have $4 million. Those two people are not equally happy because their money does not make them better off. There are three things that set prospect theory apart from utility theory. First, prospects are looked at in light of a person's present level of wealth. 2. The difference between $900 and $1,000 is less noticeable than the difference between $100 and $200. This is called the concept of diminishing awareness. 3. Losses are more scary than gains. If we have an equal chance of losing $100 or winning $150, most people don't take the chance because they want to win more than they want to lose. Similarly, we feel bad about losing things we own, as shown by the endowment effect. This is because it hurts more to lose something enjoyable than to gain something enjoyable. Standard economic theory says that people are reasonable and will think about the possible outcomes of a choice based on how likely those outcomes are to happen. But prospect theory shows that people don't always judge events based on how likely they are to happen. People tend to overestimate the chance that they won't get the money when they know they have a 95% chance of winning $10,000. They stop taking risks and will often take a smaller amount that they know they will get. When there is a 5% chance of getting $10,000, people put more faith in their chances and hope for a big win. This is why people buy lottery tickets. Prospect theory explains why we think odd events happen more often than they really do and why we avoid all risks in some situations, even though not all risks are bad. When we don't want to lose, we often double down on the money or resources we've already put into a project, even if that money would be better spent on something else. This is because we don't want to cut our losses. In other ways, our brains may not be logical. For example, when we think about two situations separately versus when we think about them together, we may make different choices. If you show two different situations side by side, for example, people are more likely to give to an environmental cause that helps dolphins than to a fund that helps farms get skin cancer checks. But when looked at as a whole, people will help the farmers more because people usually value people more than animals. The way a problem is presented can also affect our choices. For example, we are more likely to have surgery if we are told that 90% of people who have it will survive 1 month than if we are told that only 10% will survive. It's hard to fight frames because we don't see the other frame very often, so we don't always know how the frame we see changes our choices. In addition, Kahneman worked on studies that looked at ways to measure happiness and feelings. He found that we have an experiencing self and a remembering self. The remembering self often decides what we do more than the experiencing self. In this case, the way an event finishes seems to be more important to us than the experience itself. We also don't remember how long an event lasted, we remember how painful or enjoyable it was. This makes us think about our lives in ways that put our big memories ahead of the little things that make up our daily lives. Kahneman ends by making the case for why it's important to understand the flaws that affect our thinking so that we can spot times when we're likely to make mistakes and put in more mental effort to avoid them.
About the author. Kahneman was born in 1934 in Tel Aviv, but he grew up in Paris, France. He and his family lived in Paris when Nazi Germany took it over in 1940. They spent most of the war trying to stay out of concentration camps. His family lived through everything except for his father, who died of diabetes in 1944. The family then went to British Palestine in 1948, which was right before Israel became a country. To study psychology, Kahneman went to the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in 1954. After that, he worked in the Israeli Defense Forces Psychology Department. He went to the United States in 1958 to get his PhD in psychology from the University of California, Berkeley. After that, Kahneman taught psychology and worked with Amos Tversky to study prospect theory, reasoning, and making decisions. Kahneman won the 2002 Nobel Prize in Economics for prospect theory.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.